Have you ever heard the story of the three identical strangers? Well, what if we told you that psychiatrists conducted a secret study where they intentionally separated three identical triplets at birth? One was placed with a blue-collar family, one with a middle-class family, and one with a wealthy family. Then, the psychiatrists would visit the children every few months to see how each one was developing. The goal of this human experiment was to test the theories of nature versus nurture. Basically, how would three identical triplets grow and develop under very different socioeconomic circumstances? Then, 2 decades later, the three identical strangers happened to randomly stumble upon each other. At first, the reunion was happy and joyous. But as time went on and more details emerged, the dark side of this story would eventually come to light. If you've never heard the story of the three identical strangers, then buckle up and get your popcorn ready, because this is one interesting tale. Robert Shafran was 19 years old when he started college in New York. The year was 1981. Almost immediately, students and staff started greeting him and calling him by the name Eddy Galland. At first, Shafran was confused. But once Shafran met Galland, they quickly realized that they were twins who had been adopted separately. As time went on, the curious story began to pick up publicity and eventually made it into the New York newspapers. Soon after, the brothers received a phone call from another 19-year-old man named David Kellman. Kellman, who was also adopted, had seen the newspaper story. He then proceeded to drop a bombshell on the brothers when he told them, quote, "You're not twins. We're triplets. I'm the third." So, in another stunning turn of events, the twins separated at birth quickly became the triplets separated at birth. As you can imagine, this caused the story to pick up even more publicity. In fact, the newfound triplets became somewhat famous and appeared on several TV shows. The new brothers found themselves to be alike in many ways. They all had similar tastes in food, clothes, and women. In addition, they all smoked the same brand of cigarettes and they all wrestled in high school. They also shared similar mannerisms, including a wide, joyous smile. The three identical strangers quickly bonded, and they all moved in together. They even opened a restaurant named Triplets, which they operated together. Unfortunately, the honeymoon period would soon end. And as we said earlier, the darker side of this story would eventually come to light. But first, how had the three identical strangers been separated at birth? Well, following the revelations, the boys' parents requested more information from the adoption agency. At first, they were told the triplets were separated due to the difficulty of placing triplets into a single household. But upon further investigation, it was revealed that the infants had been used as part of an elaborate psychological experiment hatched in the 1960s. The experiment consisted of separating twins, and some triplets, at birth. The infants were then placed with families having different parenting styles and economic levels. As we stated earlier, the triplets in this case were broken up into one blue-collar, one middle-class, and one wealthy family. So basically, the psychiatrists were conducting a human experiment on nature versus nurture and using the three infants as human test subjects. Unfortunately, none of this information was ever revealed to anyone, including their adoptive parents. The families also came to realize that the boys had been nursed together in the same bed for the first 6 months of their lives. This explained why, for the first year, all three had displayed terrible separation anxiety, which consisted of constant screaming and banging their heads against their cribs. As teenagers, each of the boys continued to have mental health issues and all three were treated in psychiatric hospitals. In 1979, Shafran was on probation after pleading guilty to charges in connection with the murder of a woman in a 1978 robbery. As time went on, their mental health issues would only further haunt the triplets. After being reunited for a few years, the differences between the three grown men had started to become more apparent. Eventually, Robert Shafran ended up leaving the restaurant. Soon after, Eddy Galland had a mental breakdown. He ended up being diagnosed with manic depressive disorder and was admitted to the hospital. Unfortunately, soon after his release in 1995, Eddy Galland took his own life. Around that same time, the New Yorker magazine published an article about a set of studies named the Nuebauer twin experiments. These experiments began in 1950 and were led by Dr. Peter Nuebauer. The New Yorker article provided some further details about the experiments. They also showed that the case of siblings being intentionally separated at birth was not isolated. Unfortunately, there was, in fact, many more similar cases. The full results of Dr. Nuebauer's study have never been disclosed to the public. Chillingly, only the researchers involved know how many sets of twins or triplets never got the chance to meet their brother or sister. So unfortunately, we don't know the full extent and damage which these human experiments caused. However, it is known that amongst the sets of twins who were separated at birth, many ended up taking their own lives. Before Dr. Nuebauer died in 2008, he gave the case files to Yale University, on the condition that they remain sealed to the public until the year 2065. Presumably, this timeline allows enough years for anyone involved in the study to have passed away by then. The triplets separated at birth in this case have stated that they felt like lab rats. Despite their obvious mental health issues, no one from the study ever reached out to help. David Kellman is quoted as saying, quote, "It was absolutely separation anxiety. Those who were studying us saw there was a problem happening and they could have helped. That's the thing we're most angry about. They could have helped and didn't." So, what do you think about the story of the triplets separated at birth? Can you imagine finding someone that looks and acts just like you? What about the researchers? Should they have been held accountable for their actions? We would love to hear what you think. Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, we would appreciate a quick click on that subscribe button. That way, you can stay up to date when we release our next video about one of the most interesting things in the world. In the meantime, stay safe out there, and keep exploring.